planning for an additional 4 apartments, and I actually did this development in conjunction with the council. They wanted to rent the building from me on a long lease, and I sold that building into a pension fund who were paying a very good price for the property. So I was doing more complex deals at this time. So to give you the figures on this deal, I paid 400. I spent 1.3 million on the build. It was a big development project. I sold it for 1.6 million, but actually that equated to a loss of £100,000 on that deal. It was a really sizable loss I made on that project. I did another one. I bought a development site. I was going to convert this pub into apartments. I paid £220,000 for it, but there were various issues along the way. I put some money into this deal of 28,000, and I just had to get rid of it. There were some problems, and I moved it on. Somehow I actually sold it for £3,000 more, but when you take into consideration the various costs, I made a loss of £25,000 on this property. And then I actually had the worst loss of all of the deals that I've done. Now, if I explain to you the very beginning of this deal, there's many lessons that you'll be able to take out of this deal. So I paid £1.3 million for this block of 10 apartments. And the plan on this building was to do a refurb on it of £500,000. And it wasn't even structural, it was really cosmetic. It was bathrooms, kitchens, carpets. I was meant to be renting it out to a care provider, so I had to tailor the spec to them. But it was a relatively low-risk refurbishment in relation to what could be done. I allowed for a contingency on this building of £100,000, called maybe for finance costs or overrunning on the build. And I actually had a sale agreed in principle to a pension fund for £2.4 million on this building. So my forecasted profit was about £500,000. Now you could say to yourself there, well, what could possibly go wrong? And I was asking myself the same question at the time. Where can I go wrong on a deal like this? Well, many of you will remember a few years ago, Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng pretty much crashed the economy. And this was around this exact time. And what happened is that the pension fund renegotiated that price on me. So if we move on to the way the figures actually worked out, I still paid the £1.3 million. The refurb still cost me £500,000. My contingency was still £100,000. But the problem was that the sale to the fund had been reduced from 2.4 on the left to 1.9 on the right, which meant my profit was now zero. So it was a really difficult position to be in. But the problem was, this had a few consequences, which I'll explain. As I said, the economy crashed, and I had a really big problem. And the problem was that I had funding in place for this building. And my funding line said, well, Michael, because you've lost the sale to the pension fund, we can no longer fund the build. So I lost my funding to build the development, which meant all of a sudden I needed to somehow magically find £300,000. So if you think about that, I've gone from a position of I'm going to make £500,000, so I need to find £300,000. In other words, I'm in the shit. It was a really challenging position to be in. And again, there's lots of lessons you can take out of this. So I suppose the question I can ask to you is, if you were in this position, where would you find £300,000? And I had to be really creative and rack my brain. And I had £300,000 in other properties, but it's not difficult to access. So the only way I could do that was to sell my beautiful family home that I built 2 years ago. It was a really challenging time. But like I said, I'll tell you about the highs and I'll tell you about the lows as well. And as you can see from the pictures, it was really, really nice. But you move on. So back to the development. I was able to raise the cash, I completed the site, and because the economy had just crashed at the time, I had very little refinance options, which meant the only way I could actually refinance it was creating new leases. I won't bore you with the complexities of that, but it meant that I had 10 buy-to-let mortgages on that building instead of one mortgage. I actually ended up renting it to a short-term let company, and they even ended up scamming me on that building with various methods for about £66,000. It was a really challenging deal, and equates to a loss of about £400,000. Now I still own that building, it's still rented out, and I'm just paying off that loan over time. It's still a great pension pot for me, and it's in Margate in Kent, so many of you might know it. So there's good capital growth projected in that area. So I've held this building for many years, and it's another lesson learned. And I move on to another deal, and this was an HMO property. Many of you will have seen HMOs, you know all about HMOs, a very popular investment opportunity out there. Now with this one I paid £420,000. I had a projected refurbishment cost of £500,000, and I had a valuation in place of £1.5 million, which meant my profits on this deal would be around £500,000. Now again you might ask, what could possibly go wrong? Well, often when it rains, it certainly does pour. And I had a housing association who was going to rent this building from me. Unfortunately, they went into administration, so I lost my proposed tenant for the building. I signed a new lease with a homeless provider, a different type of housing association, but then I had another problem, and that was my builder who was going to do the works went bust. Fortunately, he hadn't started on site, but it meant I had to find another builder. And then matters got even worse. The homeless provider that was going to occupy the building, they went into administration as well. It was just one nightmare after another. I was having the building broken into, I had pipes stolen, fires were being started, I became into a bit of a drugs den, the police were calling me, had squatters in the building, and really I was just thinking, God, why didn't I just focus on solid properties, generally new build, simple properties, but I had to navigate my way out of this building. But just to explain the finances of this deal, to give you total transparency, this is a picture I took of the building. It was about 7 p.m. in the evening. It was about a year ago, in fact. I had to board the whole thing up. And in terms of where I was at this time, I owed the bank on this building £500,000. But the value of the building itself was about £250,000. It was less than what I owed the bank, which meant I was in threat of repossession on the building. And I had PGs in place. Now, if any of you don't know, a PG stands for personal guarantee. What that means is if you borrow money, you personally guarantee that. So the property might be in a company, but if there's any problems, if you default on the loan, they will come after you personally. And like many of you, I've got a wife and 2 children. It was a rather stressful place to be. Anyway, through hard work and a bit of determination, I managed to get a new contractor into the building. They did the refurb on it for £400,000. I managed to get a new housing association in place for the building, and I've actually got a sale going through at the moment for £1.2 million. The profits, loss, I think it's probably going to be about break even. But again, I've learned so many lessons from this property. So I suppose the key takeaway for you is, what are the lessons learned? And I could bore you all day with 1,000 lessons, but I've tried to condense it down into 5 key lessons. And like I said, I think the first one is to just keep it simple. We don't need to be too creative. We don't need to take too many risks. We don't need to take out personal guarantees or complicate it. Just buy simple, discounted properties. Because when they're discounted, you've got the equity built in from day one. You can later sell the property at a higher value. And I think also, especially if you're going to build a portfolio, you can refinance it, pull some money out, and retain that building and allow the value to keep on growing. The second lesson is one of my favourite sayings: to catch a wave, you've got to get in the water. Now what I mean by that is, I've spoken to many investors over the years who go to courses, they read books, they go to seminars, come to shows like this, of course, but at the end of the day, you've got to eventually take the plunge. If you want to make the gains, you've got to buy a property. The best way to learn is to actually be in the game. So get in the water and buy a property. You've got to buy something eventually. And thirdly, as I've said a couple of times in the talk, just think very carefully about personal guarantees. You might look at a deal and say, I'm going to make life-changing profit on this deal. Hundreds of thousands of pounds, maybe millions of pounds of profits in a deal. And you know what? You might do. You just might do. But the lessons I've learned, if things go wrong, you can find yourself in a very, very precarious position to be. And those sleepless nights will stack up very quickly. So my advice is, I'm not saying avoid them, you should make your own decisions, but just think very carefully about them. The fourth one is get good accountants and good tax advice. Now the best reason I can tell you this is, again, I'll tell you about my situation. Now all the different properties I own are held in different companies. Many many of you will know that it generally makes more sense to buy a property into a company instead of into your personal name. I won't tell you all the details of that, there's probably other seminars here about that, but it's a general rule of thumb. Now, if you've got good accountants, they can advise you on that. I own all my properties in different companies, and they're all in what you call a group structure. Now, so in my group structure, because I've made these losses, I can offset those losses by future gains. So to explain that in a little bit more detail, when I make future profits and I've got to pay corporation tax, I don't have to pay corporation tax because I offset them against the losses I made in the past. And I can do that by getting good tax advice. And you must do that as well. And actually, again, because I'm so transparent, I'll tell you, so the position accounts, I'm showing losses of about £900,000 on my accounts, which means I won't pay any corporation tax until that comes down. And also, your company and you personally are very different entities. So in my position, Michael Sachs has loaned my companies about just over £600,000. Now what that means is I can take that money out of the company and pay no dividend tax, no income tax, because my accounts show that I've loaned that money to the company. So just some good examples there, and make sure you get good tax advice. And again, any investors that work with us, we can point you in the direction of good consultants. And finally, the last piece is build your network and maintain relationships. For me, I think property is the ultimate people game. It's all about relationships and who you know, who can help you. And there's been countless times through my career when people have pointed me in the direction of a great builder or a great deal, or they've helped me with something. And you really must cultivate and harness your relationships. The more people you know, the more people you'll be able to lean on, you know, in good times and in bad times. And I really recommend that you do that as well. So to move on, what am I doing now? Well, I think most importantly, I still massively believe in property. I mean, you clearly do as well, you're all here. And I think, if you think about the last 5 years, it's been actually rather, it's been a time of turmoil, I think we could all say. We had COVID, we had Brexit, we had 14 consecutive months of rate rises, we had double-digit inflation, we've had 2 world wars. There's been real economic uncertainty, and yet despite all of that, prices have continued to go from strength to strength. You all know this. So just imagine, with a bit more certainty over the next 5 years, just imagine what growth we're going to see over the coming years. And I'm very optimistic about this. And if you think about it, we're just a tiny little island with this ever-growing population. We have a massive lack of housing supply. We have growing demand and little supply. And what that means is that prices will simply continue to go up and up. So we continue to invest into the property market. And also I've got very strong relationships with developers all over the country, so I can still get access to good deals. And also we continue to help other investors, and they can join us on our journey of buying good deals. So I've actually launched Sachs Properties, which is my company. Like I said, I'm very transparent and honest what I do, so I've put my name above the door. And our stand is right behind you, actually there, 228. Just to give you an example of the type of deal that we do, this is a block of apartments in Birmingham. The development's all built, all completed, all sold on the open market, and we've negotiated a deal for the last 10 apartments on this block. And we've managed to get prices of £20,000 less than other people have paid for those properties. So it's very off-market discount for our clients. Anyway, that brings the end of my talk. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Like I said, our stand is right behind you on 228. Welcome to ask us any questions, and I hope you enjoyed the day. Thank you very much.